Voter registration on course despite concerns over low turnout, IEC officials say. Gambia's COVID-19 confirmed cases reached nearly 6,000, including a confirmed case of the Indian variant. And ECOWAS heads of states condemns Mali's recent coup in an extraordinary summit in Accra. These and more coming on Gambia 24. Stay tuned. Good evening, viewers. You're watching Gambia 24 here on Africa TV with me, Sohna Tunkara, and now to our news in detail. Barely 3 days after the Independent Electoral Commission kick-started the 2021 voter registration campaign, there has been concerns of low starts of registration in some registration centers within the Greater Banjul areas. Elections are often regarded as a complex process that requires the participation of key players who perform different activities and functions. Details of that in this report by Amadou Kante.
According to the Independent Electoral Commission, the 2021 voter registration is expected to run between the 29th of May and the 11th of July across the country. Since the commencement of the registration on Saturday, there have been concerns of slow start and low turnout in some quarters within the Greater Banjul area. However, the communication officer of the Independent Electoral Commission, Parmakan Khan, told Africa TV that the voter registration exercise is on course despite some logistical challenges in some registration centers. Mr. Khan said the IEC is working with their registration officers in addressing challenges they face during the first and second day of the registration. According to him, one of the major challenges faced by the IEC is political interference, especially in the North Bank region.
As part of the challenges that we experienced in day 1 and day 2 of the voter registration was the issue of political interference by some members of political parties and political party agents in particular. So this is something that we really condemn. I think as agents, they should be fully aware of their duties and their functions in their voter registration exercise. The function or duty of the party agents is to observe proceedings of the voter registration. And in case they have any issues concerning the process, they can take due process and then also they can report those issues to their political party. And that they must never take the law in their own hands. Because yesterday, particularly in SL, we saw we had reports of some political party agents who were obstructing people from being registered. I think this is wrong. They should abide by the regulations. They should respect the law.
Contrary to reports of low turnout within the Greater Banjul areas, Mr. Khan said there has been high turnout in the provinces. As December presidential elections draws nearer, voter registration is seen as an integral component of the electoral process. It enables the citizens of the country to exercise their fundamental right of electing the leader of their choice. The Independent Electoral Commission has deployed 220 registration teams to 730 registration centers across the country. Reporting for Africa News, I am Amadou Kante.
Voter registration campaign ongoing across different regions in the Gambia as election approaches. Now the Gambia continues to record new confirmed cases with the latest official figures showing nearly 606,000 rather confirmed cases. Despite the surge in new cases and deaths, the restriction and precautionary measures laid to control the spread of the virus in the Gambia seems to be relaxed among the public with no official declaration. More of that in this report by NDCC.
The coronavirus pandemic is taking its toll in countries across the world, despite the development of different vaccines to control the spread of the virus. At the peak of the pandemic, restrictions such as the wearing of face masks, social distancing, among other measures were strongly observed in the Gambia. However, as cases continue to surge with a total of 5,993 confirmed cases. Many COVID-related restrictions have been lifted. Businesses such as bars, gyms and nightclubs resumed normal operation and borders were also opened. All restrictions are in effect. On 8 March 2021, the government announced that it will suspend all political events and other forms of public gatherings in the country to curb the spread of the virus. But these announcements don't seem to be properly observed, as political parties continue to go ahead with their political events across the country in their quest to contain the virus. The Ministry of Health also said all travelers arriving from countries where new strains of the virus have been identified will be required to undergo COVID-19 testing upon arrival at the airport. COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all sectors in the country, causing potential economic meltdown. As ongoing, over 33,819 people have been vaccinated across the country. According to the latest release on 31st March 2021, all those who have taken first jab of the vaccine between 5th to 8 March are urged to return for their second dose before 27 June 2021. Currently, the Gambia has recorded 179 deaths since the outbreak of the virus in March 2020, with 5,780 recoveries. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am DCC.
From reports on updates of COVID-19, we move to some political stories where in an extraordinary summit on the political situation in Mali, ECOWAS heads of states and governments strongly condemned Mali's recent coup. In the recent Accra summit, the leaders of ECOWAS demand the immediate release of the former president and prime minister of the transition who are currently under house arrest. Amindao takes us through.
It took about 9 months for Mali's former coup chief, Assimi Goïta, to stage another coup, but this time overthrowing a government he once served. The recent coup came a day after the arrest of Malian President Bandao and Prime Minister Moutar Ouani at a military base in Kati outside Bamako. At the invitation of President Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who doubles as the chair of the Authority of Heads of States and Government of the Economic Community of West African States, the leaders of ECOWAS countries held an extraordinary summit on the political situation in Mali. They expressed strong and deep concerns over the present crisis in Mali, which is coming halfway to the end of the agreed transition period after the presentation of the report by Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, former president of Nigeria and ECOWAS special envoy and mediator to Mali. The ECOWAS leaders strongly condemned the coup and demand the immediate release of the former president and prime minister of the transition. The coup is seen as a violation of the decisions taken at the extraordinary summit held in Aburi, Ghana on 15 September 2020 and a violation of the Transition Charter. The following decisions were taken after an extensive discussions on the situation in Mali.
They affirm the importance and necessity of respecting the democratic process for ascending to power, in conformity with the 2001 ECOWAS Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance. They particularly condemned all actions that led to ongoing instability in Mali and its attendant consequences in the region. Desire to suspend Mali from ECOWAS institutions in line with ECOWAS provisions. Call for a new civilian prime minister to be nominated immediately. A new inclusive government should be formed to proceed with the transition program. They affirm the need to respect the transition period of 18 months decided in Accra. In this context, the date of 27 February 2022, already announced for the presidential elections, should be absolutely maintained. A monitoring mechanism will be put in place to this effect. Reiterate the earlier decisions that the head of the transition, the vice president and prime minister of the transition should not, under any circumstances, be candidates for the forthcoming election. The armed ECOWAS support to accompany the transition process in Mali. Urge all international partners, the African Union, the United Nations and European Union to continue to support Mali towards the successful implementation of the transition.
The West African leaders called for the immediate implementation of all these decisions in conformity with the transition timetable defined. The coup d'etat came after the Malian government reshuffle left out two soldiers who led the coup in August last year and raised fears of a second military takeover. Meanwhile, the summit was attended by 14 ECOWAS heads of states and government, including Gambian President Adama Barrow. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
The National Audit Office has, during a recent press briefing, announced the submission of up to 7 reports to the National Assembly for scrutiny. Of the list of reports before forwarded to lawmakers, the Director of Audit Performance Unit noted that a very few have so far been discussed in chambers. Here's detail of that in this report.
The National Assembly, as an oversight body of the National Audit Office, in executing its mandate, is expected to scrutinize audit reports, after which they will be available for public consumption. However, the National Audit Office appears to be waiting on the National Assembly for the adoption of the audit reports or otherwise. The Director of the Audit Performance Unit at the National Audit Office, Barbara Drame, said several reports have already been shared with the Parliament.
It is the responsibility of the National Assembly to discuss our audit reports, to hold those charged with governance the responsibility to make sure that our recommendations are implemented. But as I explained, we have sent 7 reports to the National Assembly since the inception of the Performance Audit Unit. None of the reports have been discussed, and if they have been discussed, that would have pushed the relevant officers to implement the audit recommendation, which would have translated into better service delivery, and also which would have improved the lives of citizens of the Gambia.
In the explanation of Mr. Drame, the Assembly had dealt with previous reports on time, but it appears that the queue is a bit long towards the scrutiny table.
But it's not only these reports that have not yet been discussed. These are the performance audit reports. There are other reports, government account reports, that were not discussed on time. Recently, they have discussed, I think, 2017 and 2018. Those were submitted earlier on, but they were recently discussed.
Among the list of reports to be discussed by lawmakers includes the Emergency Obstetric Care Report, which was awarded as the Report of the Year. As the Supreme Audit Institution of the Gambia, it is responsible for the audit of government institutions and public bodies with the support of other government partners to ensure that recommendations are acted upon. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Amindao.
From the report by Amin Dao on matters of the National Audit, we will now go with a short commercial break and the news continues.
Following the announcement by the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, of the dates for the general voter registration scheduled from the 29th of May to 11th July 2021, the National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, reminds the public that voter registration is an integral part of the electoral process, as it is key to franchise as stated in Section 39 of the Constitution, and hence a civic right and a duty for all eligible Gambians. The NCCE therefore encourages every eligible citizen to fully participate in this crucial national exercise, as it is the basis for any credible and participatory election. The National Council for Civic Education informs the public that to register and acquire a voter's card in the upcoming general voter registration exercise, one has to prove your Gambian citizenship by producing one of the following documents as stated in Section 12 of the Elections Act: birth certificate, ID card, passport, or alcalo or district chief attestation. As the Gambia prepares for this very important national exercise, the National Council for Civic Education reminds the public to stay away from any altercation and refrain from the use of abusive language, provocative actions, intimidations, thugs, and physical confrontation at all times, as these contravene the laws of the Gambia. The public is encouraged to follow due process to seek redress when the need arises during the period to ensure that peace and stability prevail throughout the process. Voter's card is your key to franchise. Register to vote and vote wisely. This message is brought to you by the National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, with support from the United Nations Development Programme.
The pride we take in our brand, the work we put in to constantly change the landscape and elevate real estate in the Gambia, it's compared to none. From inception, our goal was to add value to the beautiful Gambian landscape. That's why we are proud innovators of community estates. Kololi Sands is an exceptional piece of work, tailored for ultimate convenience and luxury, to bring you an element of finesse that is rare but unique in its own. This is also our pride and joy, and we welcome you to the exquisite beauty right here in Kololi and right here on the waterfront. Kololi Sands, feel the ocean breeze at your doorstep.
Welcome back. If you're just joining, this is Gambia 24, and now to the rest of our stories. The effects of COVID-19 on the economy of the Gambia cuts across businesses, especially those starters as well as small and medium enterprises. The sector, amounting for nearly 40% of the GDP in developing countries like the Gambia, is noticeably thriving hard to leave the effects of COVID-19 behind. Our reporter Binta Fati spoke to some entrepreneurs as well as stakeholders on the effects of the pandemic and their recovery measures.
Small-medium enterprises play a vital role in the global economy, especially in developing countries, as they contribute immensely to the creation of jobs as a foundation for economic stability. However, the emergence of COVID-19 has a huge impact on these enterprises, including those owned and run by women. These challenges are manifested in bankruptcy and eventually loss in jobs for these entrepreneurs. The Chief Executive Officer of JBS Creation, Jatumbai, said her first venture in the production of casual wear and other innovative avenues such as the recycling of plastic bottles, calabash and coconut shells for in- and outdoor decorations were affected by the global pandemic, considering countries barely continued trade on goods and services in the regular manner. As the greatest focus was shifted on health, safety and medication.
I could not get the raw materials that I needed for production, and the sales were not that much, so I had to, ignore some of my products, and it really affected me, yeah.
Due to this unbearable circumstance, Ms. Mbai had no option than to lay off her sales staff, as the company could no longer foot the bills. As if the pandemic was so selective, female businesses were all on the list of punishment one way or the other. Mama A. Bajan, Chief Executive Officer of Yamama Secret Beauty, and Aisata Seka, a dealer in traditional fabrics, both confirmed the effects of COVID-19 on SMEs. As the incident from the global pandemic subsides, businesses are slowly but surely on steady recovery, in the view of Abdullah Baji, Communication Officer of the Youth Empowerment Project. In another perspective, the pandemic had exposed these enterprises to the online market, which is an advantage.
I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic happened. There was a huge problem, but there was also an opportunity, and the opportunity was online markets, which I'm sure we have seen evolve, during the time of the pandemic. So,
according to the World Bank, small and medium enterprises account for the majority of businesses worldwide, representing 90% of the industry and about 50% of employment. This sector accounts for about 40% of the gross domestic product in developing countries. In the Gambia, SMEs constitute 60% of the labor force and 20% of the gross domestic product. For our Africa TV News, I am Binta Fati.
COVID-19 pandemic continues to affect the business sector, particularly the small enterprise. Now, millions of people around the world are left without jobs since the outbreak of the coronavirus global pandemic. This has put the economic status of many in a bleak situation, especially women single parents who have limited opportunities to boost their income. Details of that in this report by Amadou Kante.
As the world continued to battle on COVID-19 pandemic, many countries around the world are still struggling to resuscitate their economies after succumbing to the global health crisis. Millions of people were laid off their works due to these devastating effects, putting many people in a dire economic hardship, especially women single parents in Africa. In the Gambia, single parents are among the most people affected during the pandemic, considering the limited options they have to keep heads over water in the COVID-19 period. Lena Baji, a single parent and artist by profession, highlighted some of the challenges he encountered mainly during the stay-at-home orders by government.
Like many of my colleagues, we all went through a challenging moment during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially when the government imposed a national lockdown. It was not also easy with us because all our activities were halted for a long time without receiving any support. My advice to the government is to consider not us as single parents or artists, but everyone who needs support in such a demanding time.
Speaking on the plight of vulnerable groups in the face of the pandemic, National Assembly member for Tumanda for the Drame is of the view that government should single out women in need for support.
As a member of parliament, as somebody who is representing all sectors of human life, including the old, the young, and the women, this is very important because, as we all know, women are very vulnerable when it comes to these natural disasters, when it comes to war, and when it comes to these pandemics. So more so, a woman that is living with siblings without the father. I mean, we all know what that really means, especially in the Gambian context. So this is something that I really support, and I want the government to really support these single women that are single, and again, they are also parents. So this is something that I really supported.
The coronavirus pandemic has exposed and intensified gender inequality in Africa. Many women are compelled to work harder than before for even lesser income. Reports have it that even before the COVID outbreak, the statistics of women in Africa, especially the single parents among them, struggling with major economic problems has always been high. On the heels of the COVID-19 pandemic, African leaders have been urged to prioritize the women's needs as a matter of equity on the spare their economic status. Reporting for Africa News, I am Amadou Kante.
From the report by Amadou Kante on the impact of COVID-19 on women single parents, we move on to our last story, which reads, with the fast-growing digital migration, business operations as well as individual social errands are getting increasingly compatible with the World Wide Web. Along the line of scientific advancement, tech applications and their services stand a chance of being combined with the development of destruction and their usage. This exponential growth of the internet in one end avails criminals the right ammunition to pursue their expertise in hurting victims and the comfort zones of their illegal offices. Here is more of that in this report. The carnage of cybercrime for the use of computer on the internet as instrument to further illegal activities surfaced in the 21st century. Crimes such as identity theft, fraud, money laundering and pornography occurred everywhere, posing a threat to any internet user. It has been argued that the outbreak of coronavirus has also given birth to an unwavering impact on women even in the Gambia. The virtual traffic does not only relate to economic drainage, but also psychological upsets for victims of cybercrimes. Instances of leakage of either real or graphically make-up digital portraits with attempt to hold women at ransom or just to degrade their status in society have been recorded. Cases are not left unattended to, as law enforcement authorities and Human Rights Watch are also found within the threat of cybercrime issues. The business development manager of Joko Labs Banjul, Madeline Ileleji, exposed cybercriminals for the usage of digital production as tool to suppress personal progress of well-meaning people in society.
So in digital security, we would say to protect yourself, what you do offline, it's the same thing that you have to do online. Make sure that you are mindful of the type of information you share with the general public. Make sure you're also mindful of the type of images that you share with friends and people you also have intimate relationship.
The Gambia Police assured that special arrangements apply to fraudulent use of online banking, urging the public to report cases on the toll-free 112 line. Public Relations Officer of the Gambia Police Force, Superintendent Lamin Jai, acknowledged reports of cyber targets on women, but was quick to blame the culture of silence in the adjudication of such crimes.
The laws of the Gambia does not cover a lot of issues that are happening on the computer or on the internet regarding cybercrime. And so that's a challenge sometimes. Certain things that are definitely chargeable offenses somewhere else, we may find it difficult to charge somebody, but we are doing our utmost best to ensure that issues of cybercrime, especially when it is directed to women, are being dealt with.
Another aspect of the challenge is the fact that specific laws governing cybercrime activities are not in place. The situation, in fact, led to a march passed in September calling on government and stakeholders to take measures to cope cybercrimes in the Gambia. For African News, Sohna Tunkara. Cybercrimes continues affecting mostly women in the Gambia. Well, that was all on Gambia 24. You can stay tuned for more of our interesting programs here on Africa TV. I am Sohna Tunkara. Thanks for watching. Good evening.